Jesse Daniel didn't choose country music. It chose him after everything else nearly took him out.
I do credit, music, country music specifically, with saving my life, just because it gave me this gleaming little bit of hope that I could hold on to through a lot of those dark times.
He grew up in the mountains of Santa Cruz County, a welder's son raised on punk rock shows, country records, and blue-collar grit. But by his 20s, Jesse wasn't on stage. He struggled through years of substance abuse and instability, bouncing between jail cells, rehab centers, and the kindness of friends. Then, inside a rehab in Oakland, a man with a guitar played a Hank Williams song. Jesse said, "I wish I could do what you do." The man looked at him and said, "Why don't you?" That was the spark. Today, Jesse tours the country with a band full of road warriors, writing some of the most honest songs in country music. And his new album, Son of the San Lorenzo, might just change everything. You might not know Jesse Daniel yet, but by the end of this video, you won't forget him. Jesse Daniel was born in 1992 in the rugged mountains of Santa Cruz County, California, a place where the air smells like pine and redwood, and the steady rush of a creek outside his childhood home was a constant soundtrack. It's the kind of place where you learn to work with your hands, where music and nature are inseparable. Music wasn't just something to listen to in Jesse's house, it was a way of life.
The area that I'm from has a big culture of music. My dad played in a band. A lot of other people's parents or, even teachers at the high school I went to, they played in bands. And music was just kind of a big part of that area. There were a lot of bands that came out of that area, specifically, classic rock bands like the Doobie Brothers.
His dad played in a local band covering legends like the Doobie Brothers, CCR, and the Eagles. That music echoed through the house, shaping Jesse before he even knew it. Meanwhile, his mom was an artist, a welder who turned scrap metal into art, selling it at flea markets across the area, but also taught welding in the local schools. He grew up in an area of blue-collar workers, rednecks, hippies, and musicians, people who lived off the land, built things from nothing, and chased inspiration wherever they could find it. The San Lorenzo Valley, where Jesse spent most of his youth, was wild, it was weird, it was full of character.
We grew up right next to an old Vietnam vet, and he would show us how to make bows and do archery, how to make weapons. We learned how to blacksmith from him. We would skin roadkill that we'd find. He would find deer that were intact, and he'd show us how to dress them and everything. And he'd keep all the hides and whatnot and the pelts. And I tell you that story because those were a lot of the types of people that were around, growing up. And I always say kind of like rednecks and hippies, living together, and just regular working people.
Others showed him how to hustle, fix fences, swing a hammer, work construction. Jesse called himself a master of none, but those early years taught Jesse to earn your keep. He worked a string of odd jobs before stepping on stage, construction gigs, shifts at grocery stores, dishwashing in a German restaurant. If it paid, he took it. That blue-collar grind grounded him, and it's still part of the reason his music feels so real today. Musically, his earliest influences were his dad's rock records and the sounds around his house. But when Jesse hit high school, he found something that shook him: punk rock.
Stuff that I really got into and that was like the biggest influence on me was 1980s punk rock, hardcore stuff. Bands like Black Flag. I loved Black Flag, Minor Threat.
It was fast, it was aggressive. Jesse wasn't just a fan, he was a drummer. Picking up his younger brother's abandoned kid drum set and teaching himself how to play. Punk rock gave him a community, energy, and identity. He threw himself into the scene, playing shows, moshing in the pit, living fast, hitchhiking around California, but underneath all of that volume was a deep restlessness, something Jesse couldn't quite shake. By his late teens, the wheels started to come off. Jesse fell hard into addiction. The highs stopped being fun, the lows kept getting lower. He was in and out of jail, bouncing around rehab centers and friends' couches. Music faded into the background. Survival became the only focus.
As I got into, my later teens, early 20s, I got into drugs. I got really heavy into, heroin and methamphetamine. I ended up getting addicted to those, and I was, in and out of jail and rehab facilities, and just kind of lived that life for a long time, just kind of ping-ponging back and forth between those places and trying to figure my life out. I do credit, music, country music specifically, with saving my life, just because it gave me this gleaming little bit of hope that I could hold on to through a lot of those dark times.
For years, his story looked like the kind that doesn't end well. But then, in a rehab center in Oakland, something shifted. Jesse met a guy that would come into the rehab center and play music. His name was Jerry. He started playing Hank Williams' Lonesome Whistle, and Jesse stopped in his tracks. That moment hit different. Jesse said to him, "Man, I wish I could do what you do." And Jerry looked at him and said, "Well, why don't you?" Simple, but for Jesse, it was a spark in the dark. That guitar, that song, it became a lifeline and reminded him who he was before the chaos. Someone with stories to tell, someone who still had something left to give.
I had been writing songs for years, since my early teens. So a lot of those times that I was either in jail or in a rehab facility or wherever I was, or if I was on the street or whatever, I was thinking of song ideas, and I was kind of dreaming of one day being able to get my life together enough to be a musician full time.
And eventually that life started to take shape. He met his now fiancée Jody, an artist herself, a steady presence who believed in him when he was barely holding it together. And together they began turning those fragments into real songs, honest ones. Years after rehab, Jesse and Jody were eating at a diner when Jesse saw someone walking by outside. "I think I know that guy," he said. Jody nudged him. "Well, go say something."
I didn't even know his name at the time. I was like, "Hey, did you used to work at a rehab facility in Oakland about 10 years ago?" And he was like, his eyes were all huge, and he was like, "Yeah, I did." And then I told him the story. I was like, "You were a huge influence on me. I make country music now. I'm a songwriter, and I moved here, and I tour all over the country, and I do all this and that." And I told him the whole story of what I had done, and that he was, a big part in like that final push that kind of got me into wanting to pursue this as a career. He got all choked up. He was like, it was a super emotional kind of moment.
A full circle moment that neither of them could have imagined in that rehab facility years ago. When Jesse finally got clean and committed to music, there was no industry roadmap, just hustle. He started small, real small. Coffee shops, dive bars, and wineries. He'd play anywhere they'd have him. In the early days, promotion meant printing flyers at FedEx and taping them up around Santa Cruz. Some nights 20 people showed up, but then the next day maybe 35. So he kept going. And then people started paying attention. Something on the channel that I'm super stoked about is our live sessions series with Marshware, and I'm super pumped to tell you that we got JD Clayton to come out and do 3 songs with us at Marshware's first ever flagship store in Charleston, South Carolina.
And tell me, can I hold your hand?
It's opening really soon, so if you're ever in the area, you have to check it out. Also, we're starting an official Western Side podcast, and me and Jesse's whole conversation will be on there for the first ever official episode. You'll have to wait just about 1 more week for the sessions with JD Clayton, but stay tuned, it's gonna be awesome. In 2018, Jesse released his debut country album, Jesse Daniel. A record that wore its punk roots proudly. You could hear the grit in the guitars, the urgency in Jesse's voice, from the opening notes of California Highway.
On that California highway, like a bird I yearn to fly away.
It felt like a road trip through his wild past. Crazy Henrietta channeled that vintage Jerry Lee Lewis energy. Kind of resembles Great Balls of Fire if you've heard that one. And then you have The Banker, a reminder that money ain't worth nothing when you're dead, but it just has great storytelling in that song.
Read what you sow. Money ain't worth nothing when you're dead.
Also, here's a sweet image I found of Tyler Childers finding a Jesse Daniel album in the wild. Even Tyler is a big fan. That debut planted the flag. But Jesse wasn't done evolving. With 2020s rolling on, he leaned hard into the Bakersfield sound. Bright electric guitars. The title track is one of those songs that you can't help but sing along to. This was Jesse dialing in his sound, sharper, more focused, but still true to himself.
In this race, there's no first place, and you're lucky just to come in last.
And that album cover, a vintage retro western vibe that tells you exactly what you're in for. By 2021, Jesse was ready to push further. Beyond These Walls saw him bringing in more fiddle, more acoustic sound, and even more heart. It was country music at its core, but with a guy who had something to prove.
Turn it up full throttle. I guess that's just the way old Clayton liked to live his life.
Clayton Was a Cowboy became one of Jesse's proudest songwriting moments. Probably a lot that you're like, dang, I really like how this one came out in particular, but was there one that kind of like stands out to you?
You know, there's ones for different reasons. You know, Clayton Was a Cowboy is a meaningful song. You know, because Jody and I wrote it together. I love it because it's in that tradition of kind of like Western storytelling. You know, I also wrote it kind of loosely based off of a guy that I used to know years ago, and so that's a very meaningful song. You know, I love Clayton Was a Cowboy.
And there's even a song on this album that's sung entirely in Spanish. Then came Counting the Miles, and the title says it all. By now, Jesse and his band were road warriors, crisscrossing the country in a van, playing night after night. You can hear that rhythm on the record, the weariness, the joy, the long drives and short sleeps. The duet with Jody on Steppin' Out is pure charm.
What's the talk about? We can fuss and fight if it takes all night. It's enough.
While That's My Kind of Country lays down a groove that's impossible not to sway to.
That's my kind of country, and it's deep down in my bones.
Also, one thing we didn't see coming was his collaboration on 2 songs with Benjamin Todd. These songs kind of have this late 70s, early 80s vibe to them, almost George Jones-esque, but hey, I'm not complaining.
Time to bring it on back home and live to die another day.
But Jesse's most personal album yet is his latest, Son of the San Lorenzo.
'Cause I ain't done running yet. Truth told, I've just begun.
It's a return to where it all started, musically and spiritually. The title is a tribute to the valley that raised him, but the songs are sharper, deeper, and more fearless than ever. Tracks like Child Is Born sound almost mystical, big and cinematic, emotionally layered.
Child is born.
He, the letter to his younger self, is as honest and vulnerable as anything he's ever recorded.
The course. Find a better use for all your time. Thumbing down old highway 9.
To summarize it, you know, I've thought about that a lot. You know, if I could go back, I would basically try to tell my younger self, you know, that there's a good life waiting for you. You know, you don't have to be that person that you've kind of become, you know, and it's hard, but it's a lot easier than you think to get out of it, you know, and to start focusing your energy. If I could tell myself, you know, once you focus your energy on the positive and on honing your craft as an artist and a songwriter and a musician, you'll be off to the races, you know, and you won't even want to look back on all that other stuff.
One of the standout collaborations is a song featuring Charles Wesley Godwin, written by Jesse's friend Nick Foster. The theme about making the most of your time here on Earth hit Jesse hard, and Charles, with his rich Appalachian voice, delivered it beautifully.
This time well spent for a man.
In the song Mountain Home, it's just pure peace. It's like longing for a place you've never been to, but for Jesse, it points back to his California roots.
I'll make it home one sunny day. How'd I ever get so far away?
Throughout the album, you can feel a tension between the redwoods of California, the honky-tonks of Texas, between punk shows and country bars, between the kid with a drum set and the man leading a band. Jesse isn't trying to fit in with anyone's mold. He's carving out his own space in country music with real personal stories worth telling. Jesse's been doing this thing for a while now, but in a way, this is the beginning of something much bigger. I really do think Jesse Daniel isn't just a rising star, he's a force that's gonna be here to stay. So, Jesse Daniel, he wasn't supposed to make it. Addiction, jail, 100 dead ends. Most stories like this fade out before they ever find their rhythm, but Jesse found something that pulled him through. Music. And now he's not just playing country music, he's living it. Every mile in the van, every note on stage, every lyric on the page. Jesse Daniel is proof that the story doesn't have to end where it got dark. Sometimes, that's where it finally begins.